Ladies and gentlemen, happy Friday. It is another glorious edition of Ask That, and I am super excited for the conversation we are about to have. Today with me, I have Jorge Coca. He is an engineer at the group known as BMW Mini Rolls Royce. They make all kinds of fancy cars. I'm not sure what the parent company of, is it just BMW? Is that the parent company?
It's the BMW Group, yeah.
BMW Group. So Jorge resides, tests in Chicago. But before we get going to one of my most passionate things, we have just somehow intermixed cars and software and everything of the likes. Jorge, why don't you give everybody a quick introduction of who you are and everything you do?
Sure. So first of all, thank you for having me here.
Sure.
It's an honor. So as you said, my name is Jorge. I've been living in Chicago for the past almost 7 years. So I'm from Spain. I was living back in Spain before, and I came to Chicago to finish my education. And what was supposed to be just 1 year, that's what I told my parents initially, turned out to be like 7 wonderful years in a city with lovely weather.
Yeah, that's it.
I started working for BMW like 2 years and a half ago, starting the Android application of what we call Connected. So it's kind of like the digital services for BMW and Mini at the moment. So, and in between working with different teams, some of them very, like, I can say that it's a great experience being here.
Yeah, I bet. So let's just dive right in, because I know our time's limited and I could probably be on this subject all day. So I'm not sure who's going to do time management, me or you. Obviously, the cars of today are way more complicated than some of the ones I have in my garage. I've got a couple late 60s automobiles. The computer is not something that's in there by any stretch, right? Wires are just, they turn things on and off, and they don't even do that very well. Today we've got cars that have screens in them. They've got sensors all around them. We have an experience that's, I'll say, decorated around the outside of them. Alexa, the phones, sorry, I gotta have to turn this Alexa off. The key, your keychains have gotten smarter. Like, when you guys think of tech on the automobile, like, how can you describe just how big that is? Like, what does it look like to have a BMW driving down the road? Like, what surrounds that thing?
Well, even that's a question that I ask myself all the time. Clearly, like, car companies are like huge engineering companies, right? And some of them, they've been around for hundreds of years with very streamlined processes. And then, like, the technology kind of like happened.
Sure.
Right? It's like,
sure.
now we start to have like internet access. We start to put screens, navigation systems, sensors. So it's not like the typical. We try to operate here in Chicago in a kind of like startup mode, where like we try to be as agile as possible and kind of like as abstracted from the hardware that we put on the road. But just for example, that planning of what's going to happen in a vehicle takes like from 7 to 10 years on a new model, right?
Sure.
So when like these departments when they do like planning and engineering, probably like the new 8 series that we are going to release, it might take like 10 years of planning. So it takes like a lot of knowledge of the market and what's going to happen in 10 years, right? Like, because software can move faster, but like hardware, and especially cars, like you don't change your car like every 2 years. Like, it could be a phone or like things like that. So it's a very interesting challenge. Yeah.
So, man, I wasn't even thinking about some of that. Okay, so that's forward looking. What about backwards looking? I mean, let's say 7 years ago you planned for iOS and Android and Alexa and all the things that go around it, and we've got a car that's now capable of doing it. Then how long backwards do you have? So I mean, I think of the fact that I've got a 50-year-old Chevy sitting in the garage. There's no way not only will the iPhone, assuming one came out in 68, right? Not only will the iPhone have changed 50 times since then, like it's unreasonable for you to support, or maybe it's not unreasonable for you to support something that's now 50 years old. Like, what does the backwards compatibility look like?
So we're talking that the services that we offer, they might go back to vehicles that were launched in 2014 or 2015. But at the same time, there's some other, like, for example, you might keep an inventory of like who purchased a certain vehicle. So the most like newest features and everything, of course, you're going to be able to support them with newer vehicles.
Sure.
But at the same time, like you can still kind of like, by keeping like good inventories and good kind of like processes, which like BMW is like really good at it,
Sure.
you were able to like retrofit some of those
Sure.
things. But definitely, like if you encounter like a vehicle that was developed in 2000, I don't know,
Sure.
5, like it's like you can offer just a certain like capabilities and that's it. Like I actually believe that not even cars back in 2005 or whatever, like they may have USB connections, right? Or
Sure.
not even Bluetooth, right? So
Yeah, but even if I bought the 2018 BMW or Rolls Royce and I hung on to it for 50 years, it's unreasonable to think that whatever integration is there today, like everything's going to move around. Everything around the automobile is going to move at a much faster pace than the automobile itself, because I bought a version in time, and while I could upgrade its hardware, that's limited to BMW or Rolls Royce or Mini saying, oh, well, here's a new CPU for that, and then going through their testing and their this, that, and the other. That's not reasonable. That's a harder thing to do as well.
The answer for many of those solutions, and that's something that like it's happening, is now we have this kind of like common knowledge that it's the cloud.
Sure.
At the end, if you consider your vehicle just like an extra device, then it kind of like simplifies the picture a little bit.
Sure.
At the end, like with your cloud services or whatever, like you're just kind of like feeding the data that the vehicle generates, and then somehow like in your cloud services or whatever, you make sense of that data. So in that sense, your car won't be that different from the phone that you have in your pocket or from the computer. It's just like the kind of information that you gather or the kind of like sensors that you have available, they're much different.
Sure.
And so of course, like,
So let's make it concrete for a bit. So you work on the Android side of things. Well, let's talk before we just dive right into the Android piece. Let's talk about the things that surround. So obviously, phones are one. What do you guys consider? If we're going to go from left to right, say the devices to the cloud to the car. What are the things that surround the cloud piece, or what surrounds the car? So mobile phones for one.
Yeah. So right now, kind of like the star products of the connected drive services are both the iOS and the Android application in combination with the web portal. But then you have some other like touch points that change the experience a little bit.
Okay.
So there's an Apple Watch application for iOS. There's a Samsung Gear application for Android where like you can check like the fuel level of your car, or like if you have like one of the connected services that we offer is kind of like your trip management. So you can like exchange destinations with the vehicle. So from your watch, you might kind of like schedule a different trip or go like show the walking directions to the vehicle. We have Alexa and Google Actions. So that kind of gives you like the interface of the voice interface with the vehicle. So you can somehow like talk to your vehicle, right?
Okay.
So we try to cover all the digital kind of like a spectrum.
Reasonable to say that I could just go to my Alexa and say, start my car, and it'll remote start it in the garage?
So start is one of the things that BMW vehicles don't support, remote start. In
general? Like not at all?
Exactly.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
It's there's so many kind of like decisions behind that.
Sure,
One of the
sure.
things that BMW is uh, very careful and very like good at it from my point of view. It's like kind of like try to protect the privacy of the customer and the driver. So there's like many reasons for not supporting that case at the moment. But like any other actions, like I just want to lock my doors. I just want
Okay.
to probably like change the temperature inside the vehicle, or I don't know, say like, hey, are my actually doors closed? Like, did I leave my car open? Like
Sure.
those are questions that you can ask Alexa easily.
Okay. So so then um what so then how does that what does that look like from like there's just so many things that I so what is that I mean what how does that look so the car's talking to your services your devices are talking to the cloud these
Hmm.
things magically just kind of work together um, I mean does that mean like the cars have their own cellular connection full time that is BMW paying for that, or is the person paying for that? I mean, it seems like there's a
So,
lot of like infrastructure and infrastructure that's
hmm
pretty volatile, in the
hmm
sense that hey, I could drive in a tunnel and I don't know
yeah.
park underground in an underground tunnel where I don't have not underground tunnel but underground garage where I don't have I don't have connections back to homeland.
Yeah, yeah, so the way it works nowadays, it's kind of like your phone at this moment is like the centric piece.
Okay.
If you don't have the phone available, let's say even inside your vehicle, a lot of the things that we offer won't happen. Um,
Okay.
so like, let's say that the entertainment systems that we put inside the car, they come with like a certain amount of apps. Uh, and then once you connect your vehicle like to your phone, like in the same way like any other like
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
CarPlay or like Google
Yep.
Auto might
Yep.
work, then you enjoy like a list of different applications
Sure.
that either BMW or the partners offer, right? So
Sure.
kind of like once you establish that connection, you have some kind of like the same connected app that you can enjoy in your phone, then you see it in the navigation system,
Sure.
or partners like Spotify, Audible, Pandora, then they will be listed in your vehicle as well.
Sure. Sure. So, how do you, as being the Android engineer, and
Mhm.
us being on this like cups of, the cars, um, entertainment. I don't. I want to use entertainment kind of. Every car now has some um, main system sitting in the dash, right? And then we
Mhm.
have, radio, navigation, climate control, all that, and we've seen these things kind of converge into one, I'll say, device. Um,
Mhm.
and then we have, on the side, we've got Android and iOS, or Google and Apple really pushing Android Auto, I think it's called, and CarPlay, right? And then
Mhm.
you have you guys also trying to augment your own in-car experience. Like
Mhm.
how is it that you guys feel your mobile experience and then like the Android Auto, iOS, CarPlay, like how do you feel about those three kind of pillars of things and is there a place where they're going to come together and get better? Is there because if you're Spotify, right, you want to be in one. If you're Waze, you want to kind of be in both of
Yeah.
these things. But if you're BMW, you've got your own experience that you have reasons that you want to have happen and not be kind of overridden either. I imagine
I
that
mean,
that's a hard like dichotomy of
yeah,
things.
I think the offerings are a little bit different. There's of
Okay.
course like some commonality between all the platforms, but I think what we offer as the connected drive platform is a bit different, right? Like we like as I was like telling you before, part of our goals is how do you interact with your vehicle once or when you're not inside the vehicle, right?
Sure.
That's why like the integration with Alexa, with Google Home, with your
Yeah.
wearables, even with your phone, it's something that, Google or Apple they cannot offer.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
while they try to offer like the experience inside the vehicle, and actually CarPlay, for example, is one of the packages that you can acquire when you uh, purchase like a BMW, right?
Yep.
While Malo, like some of those options, they will have some commonalities, and in the end, like you kind of like have like this operating system inside the vehicle, right?
Sure.
I think the offerings are a little bit different
Sure,
because of that reason.
but you still have to like, kind of, you still have to take it into account, right? Because like you're BMW, and so even if their experience is shit, like it's still a bad reflection upon how even though it's theirs, it still becomes a reflection upon your overall experience.
Yeah, and this goes back actually to what I was saying before that BMW is very kind of like when evaluating like third party partners and like what does it mean in terms of like privacy to the
Yep.
customer, good experience. BMW has an idea of what their experience means that might or might not fit into what Google and Apple or like
Sure.
any other like uh, company might offer, right?
Sure.
So there's been cases where like we have people that they want to be integrated in the car, and we say like that's great, but it doesn't fit with our model. It's not kind of
Right.
like projecting the experience or projecting or like even like fitting to the requirements that we have.
Yeah,
And
totally.
BMW is such a big company that they can actually like be
They have
picky
weight
about
behind it.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So you're playing to draw some corollaries to other parts of our industry. I mean, you're playing kind of the mobile IoT industry at like massive
Yeah.
scale, right? IoT,
Yeah.
your IoT device is this giant IoT device, this 5,000 pound machine driving down the road.
Yeah.
Um, what does it look like from a development experience? I mean, how do you what does it like? Do you sit in a car all day and just work and have cables running everywhere?
So it's a lot of fun. I have to say that my days are really, really fun. So we have like um, our main piece of integration is the entertainment system, right? Like
Yep,
how do you connect to the head unit itself, and
sure,
like what can you do with the head unit? What can you display in the screen of the car? So we have simulators and everything in our computers that emulate the behavior of these head units and
sure.
all the models. Then we have like test racks here in the office where like you can just plug and play and like test connectivity and things like that. But the best part is like yes, we have cars. We have really cool cars. So whenever we need to do testing, and also like one of the perks of working at BMW in North America is like for just being an employee, you can get one car for you for your personal use
Oh wow,
that you can
that's
keep kind of like renewing like every let's say 6,000 miles. So
yeah, that's
in
that's a
just one
pretty good
year you
perk.
can have two, three cars. Yeah, so that's pretty nice. So driving and testing it's definitely like a big part of our day. Uh, we are very like in our development cycles, like all the developers and product owners, designers, managers, like they collaborate with our testing, right? Because since we all have access to vehicles, like it's very easy to get the latest version that we distribute internally and say like, hey, I like this, I don't like this, it took me longer to do this or whatever. So that's very, very exciting because it's something that at least, I don't know, when I was a kid, it's like you dream of like
Yeah.
having one and all of a sudden like you go to the garage, it's like, what I want to drive today, an i8 or a 6 Series. So that's pretty nice.
So to that end, so you do have an inventory of cars, I mean,
Yes.
uh,
Yeah.
models of cars that you go, I need to go drive the 7 Series because I think that there is some bug in this versus the M3.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
that,
then
go
yeah,
ahead.
then you have like, for example, like it's not kind of like a vertical segment where you just have the vehicle and that's it, right? Like now we're talking that we're in the era of like combustion vehicles, hybrid
Yeah,
vehicles, electric vehicles,
sure.
uh, the head units that go inside the vehicles, they have like different hardware, different version, different capabilities. And in my case, as an Android developer, if that fragmentation is not enough, I have the fragmentation of Android
Phone.
too.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
So if you put like all those elements in like your matrix of variables, like
Yeah.
it's a very, very fun challenge to be working
Yeah, yeah.
uh, for as an engineer.
Sure. And I have to imagine, given how we started this conversation with backwards compatibility, it's also not just, I need a 2018, but we did this and now the 2015s don't work. So, I mean, is there some stack of model years as well? Or do you try to, is there some upgrade? Like, what does that look like?
So what drives like what makes it into like a certain model is pretty much like the hardware that goes inside the vehicle in
Okay.
combination with the software, right? So that's something that we can control, uh, but it's about to get like really interesting because also like different models are changing and everything, and the strategies are changing too. But like, yeah, unfortunately, like there's some stuff that we would like to release to all the vehicles that we have in the market that because of those limitations that it might be that actually the hardware is not available. Like you want to do something that you can do with the 7 series that then you go to the 3 series of 2014 and you realize like, that sensor is not available. So it's kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
like even the application itself or like the experience inside the car looks very different if you own a 3 series from 2014 that one from
Sure.
2018. Even the application itself doesn't look the same.
Sure. Oh,
So
sure.
yeah.
How do you manage deployments to the car then? Like, how much influence? I mean, I realize you're on one side of the cloud of this, but
Mhm.
I assume you have influence into the changes inside the car. So if an update needs to happen, what does that kind of deployment cycle look like?
Well, that's something that for us, what matters is like the connectivity stack between the vehicle and your phone or whatever
Sure.
other piece of hardware it is. As long as we don't break that contract, like what they do on the car side, like we can influence somehow the design, but they have the ultimate word. And right now it's a very kind of like complex process, right? Because many of these vehicles, like you still need to go to the dealer, and the
Yep.
dealer might have that update available or not. So right now it's not like any other like software like application like in your
Sure.
phone that
Totally.
gets updated over the air. Like, we're not there yet.
Yeah. Okay. But you still have like the Android. You mentioned Android fragmentation, right? You still have the
Hmm.
Android problem of like, holy cow, we've got 929 different versions of or models that all have 900 versions of what they're on, and having to manage like it's one thing to say manage the contract, right? we could
Yeah,
we could add anything we want to the contract and just kind of like, all right, we managed to it. It still has to work regardless of the things that are there, and there's a lot of work on both sides of that fence
yeah,
to say, hey, that's a 3 series, it doesn't have this sensor, don't show a shitty experience here, but don't tell it to do things it can't do either.
yeah. So it takes like the combination is like our testing strategies. They have to be very well defined. Um, Virtualization it's important too, right? For
Sure.
example, our code base just in Android, like the amount of like, for example, unit tests that we run in order to validate all our business cases and everything. Like, I think we're like for a project of like I don't know how many years, but it's a huge amount of unit tests, which is something that we're very proud of, right? Like because
Sure.
that helps us to ship code with confidence
Yep.
and make sure that nothing is breaking. The virtualization aspect of it, like you keep running all those tests with every change, with as many
Yep.
models and combinations as possible.
Yeah.
So that's the foundation that helps us to kind of like ship code like faster without knowing that we're not without
Yeah. Yeah. With
breaking
confidence.
anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like at the end, like it sounds like kind of like complex because you might think about a car that
Yep.
it's in between, but
Sure.
it's your typical like phone IoT device scenario. Like it's just like it's a huge IoT device.
Right. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, any problem, regardless of it, right? You break it down into its small parts, and you try
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
simplify the entire stack. But you don't. I look at healthcare and automotive and these things, and you don't really get to cheat, right? Like unit tests for you mean a ton because potentially life is on the line in some regards, right? It depends on what you're controlling and the things you're doing. But as we saw with like Jeep, where people were able to hack in, or Chrysler, I think, as people were able to hack in and shut down the Grand Cherokee in the middle of the highway, that's a giant problem, right?
Yeah.
And whether or not it's the phones part of it, like the ecosystem around the car all plays, a role in it. There's a contract, somebody found it, somebody figured out that they can manipulate it, and then thus shut the thing down in the middle of the road.
So that's like the way we do our testing. Like we have our security teams also like integrated in our pipeline. So before we are proposing like any changes, we sit down with our security teams. They kind of like provide guidance, review, feedback. Like again, like security is something that it's very, very important. Then this might surprise to like a lot of people like do it like agile, for example, but like before we ship anything, then there's like a huge manual process of testing that it's with a lot of drivers and that like even more combinations than what we have available to make sure that what we ship at the end, like it's going to be a good release.
Sure.
And we've been in the cases where like we couldn't ship because we failed at some point, right? So like that might be a problem for some companies, but for us, we prefer to say like, hey, this is not ready for prime time.
Yep.
So next cycle.
What does your release cycle look like? I mean, time-wise, like how often are you guys shipping?
So we like kind of like car manufacturers, right? Like they have big events throughout the year.
Yep.
So like you have
I try to align to the marketing schedules of things.
Yeah, and like also like some vehicles, they might come with new features and you want to be part of that, right?
Sure. Sure.
So we have these big deadlines that it's like we have to make it to that day. But at the same time, like then our like release cycle could be like any other like agile company where we try to put fixes in a like relatively like timely manner, right? So we're not gonna like holding onto like big features until like then we release everything at once.
Yeah. How about so the one thing we haven't really touched on is the fact that it's BMW Mini and Rolls Royce. How much stuff is shared between the two or three, I guess?
So that's something that I'm actually very, very proud of because it's everything.
Really?
Yeah. So
that's impressive.
Yeah. So when I joined the company, we were kind of like in this model of, or like in this process of releasing new apps. So I not only got to work on BMW, but I had a greenfield project. So that helped us. And one of the good things that we had at that time is like the iOS team, it was a little bit ahead of us. So we knew some of the things that they were coming.
Sure.
So that helped us we're building this project that it's just like an Android library.
Sure.
And then like our applications, they consume that library.
Yep.
And the only thing that the application level does is just kind of like change the theming,
sure.
or where the UX is required to change, then we change it at the application level. And then like there are certain features that may be available for one brand that they're not available for the other.
Sure.
So it's again like building libraries,
feature flags.
Libraries.
Yeah. How about the international landscape? I mean, all of these brands are international. They're in I don't know, probably almost every country. There's probably one of those makes across every single country on the globe. I have to imagine the international, not just rules, regulations, data. I know, certain countries have, the EU stuff is going crazy right now. It's hot on us.
Yep.
Whoa. Where in the hell does that start?
So it starts with like working with the market teams, right? Okay. So in each country you have like people dedicated to that country. So you have people in Spain, people in Italy. It happens that we have some people in Germany too.
But
Uh,
yeah, a few. But
yeah.
when you say market, you're not talking marketing team. You're talking
No, it's kind of like to help us to from like a legal point of view.
okay,
From it could include marketing, right? Because some of the releases or features they might be targeted just for certain markets.
sure,
So it's an interesting process. And then like for us, like China is a huge market, if not the biggest one, right?
sure,
And China means a lot for Android because your Google Play services are not available there. So then you also have to play with the flavor of the app, and also like
interesting,
the Chinese market is expecting different features that you might or might not offer in any like other market. So
sure,
um, it takes like it's one of the complexity variables that we have in the project of like feature flags,
yep,
like they're very useful for us. Then like different flavors of the application, and then like you have the legal aspect of it.
yep,
Uh, but it also helps us that when it comes to legal, and again, like this goes back to like how BMW treats privacy policies. Like being in this case very kind of like protective has helped us a lot to kind of like keep it consistent.
sure, sure, sure. How do you ever? And if you can't answer this, I get it. Has there, like in the open source world, right? You build there's libraries galore that we can use, and people it's super common for us to build things that other people build upon and make an ecosystem bigger, and whatever you can slap in all kinds of products there. Has there been consideration to let others like join the ecosystem and like build upon BMW's thing, like BMW as a software platform that I, Clark Sell, can make my widget that I don't know somehow does cool stuff.
Yeah, so in that case, no, like the platform is not open, as long as you're one of our partners, right? So for Spotify, we include this integration. So
Sure.
Spotify has built inside their Android application or inside their iOS this module for BMW, so you can have access to your playlist
Okay.
and like your different songs inside the head unit. But like it's something that at the moment is not open.
Sure.
The fact that you can go and say like, hey, I'm a indie developer and I just want to create my application for the car. That's not an option now.
Sure. But if I was the garage door company of the world and I wanted to have a thing that sat inside all BMWs so that when I pulled into the driveway, my garage doors opened up, that's possible, but possible through your partner program.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, I
Uh-huh.
have. It's one of those areas that I look in the computing space and go, like we've only really scratched the surface in the automobile industry.
Oh,
There's basically billions of devices running all over. When creativity mixes with that, it'll be interesting to see what kinds of things could really come of it. And sky's the limit,
yeah.
really.
This is my personal opinion. I don't know if we'll align with what's gonna happen, but like the way I foresee the future for vehicles is like there's new players in the game, of course, and then you
Mm-hmm.
have like cars with a very good reputation, like car manufacturers with a very good reputation that they're like they have to keep up, right? Like they have
Mm-hmm.
to somehow
Sure.
level up and represent what they actually mean for the car industry. Uh, that to me, it's one of the nicest challenges that we have here, right? Because it's like I'm a software engineer. I have no idea about like how to build a car, like
Yeah.
in terms of like how to put the pieces together and everything. But like I totally believe that part of the future of the vehicle industry is on software, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's on the capabilities and the services that you can add, the
Mm-hmm.
value that you add, that is not only taking you from point A to point B, that in the
Yeah.
end, that's what a vehicle does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And at the same time, like you have this part that means like as an owner of a car, you feel proud in many cases of like,
Yeah.
hey, I have this car. It's
Yeah.
my
It's your
purchase.
identity.
It's
It's
part
part of
of
your
it's
identity.
part exactly.
Yep.
It's part of your identity. It's part of even of your life, right? Like
Yep.
might be the first car that you bought with your like I don't know when you got married. It's where like the first car that you had like your baby seats.
Yep.
Who knows,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
It creates this kind of like attachment to the
Yep.
vehicle itself that it's really, really nice.
It's funny that you brought up that example. My wife and I got married in a long time ago. I won't give my age away. No, we got married in 2003, and we had bought a truck together in 2003, like the month before we got married. And that truck has since, I mean, we drive it every day. It's, I don't know, 15 years old at this point. And it's brought both of our kids home. And we're now at the point to where it's not unreasonable to think that our kids would also drive that. And so to your point about like the sentimental attachment and this and that, like it's not even just us, but also our kids are attached to that
Yeah.
thing. And it's just, I mean, it's easy to say it's just a vehicle, but they remember the going to the soccer games and the this and the that, and we remember the bringing from home. And now you think of these vehicles, they're one, super expensive. I know you get one every 3 weeks, it sounds like, which might be a reason for me to apply. But they are expensive, and so the replacement value of getting into something means, I mean, you're spending a ton of money, and so you want that experience to last as long as it can. And yet, we're going to have new Alexas, we're going to have new phones, we're going to have a new whatever, and the iPhone's only been around for 10 years. Like to think in, I could buy a BMW today and easily have it for another 10 years. To know what it would look like then is, I mean, obviously you guys are trying to figure out what it looks like in 5, 7, 10 years. That's just, I don't know, like that's kind of mind blowing for me.
I mean, I think that's one of the most beautiful things that you can face as an engineer for this kind of projects, right? It's like, usually like sometimes you're so focused in the future that's great. Like you have like a line to follow, but the challenge in our case is like we have to support past, present, and future.
Yep.
Without like trying to maximize the resources that we have available. So it's really, really important. And in this case, when we talk about software, that you understand, like, first of all, like the constraints that you have.
Yeah. Oh,
right?
yeah, totally.
That you understand also like your business model. That's very important.
Yep.
From the people telling us at the end, like engineers, what to do, like it's very important that they understand what they're dealing with at that moment. And then for us, it's very important to keep our practices like clean, up to date, organized. We have a big amount of engineers working on the same source code, right? So it's very, very important that we enable those developers to keep moving forward, to be able to keep developing on features while like not breaking anything and supporting as much as we can.
How many, like, what's the size of your development team? Are we talking tens, hundreds, thousands?
So the Chicago office here, we are around like 150 people here just on this floor.
Yep.
Then we have the big majority of like management and like big thinkers in Germany.
Okay.
And then we have also like a big development team in China.
Okay.
So for example, for the Android project, like it depends on like how the kind of like at what time of the year we're talking about, but we might be talking that we have 3 permanent teams of like, let's say 10 people each team.
Sure.
And then if we need like more support with other features, that number might kind of like increase or decrease depending on what we need.
Sure.
And that's the Android team. The iOS team is bigger.
Right. But they have less devices to test.
Yeah.
Shame on them. What's like the craziest thing that you've, like, if hindsight being 2020, or even looking forward, like what's the craziest thing that you've stumbled upon and just been like, holy cow, I just.
So to me, when I was living in Spain, it was very popular, like when I was growing up in the 90s, the Night Rider.
Yeah,
right?
totally. Yeah.
And like David Hasselhoff had this car called Kid that it's like, Kid, do this, do that.
Yeah.
We're kind of like there. Isn't that crazy?
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I never really thought about that.
Like it's just insane. And then like you see all the touch points that you have. Like when I was working last year on the wearables applications, like I was like, I'm talking with my vehicle
Yeah.
that is parked somewhere in the world from my watch.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that to me, it's kind of like I probably you don't realize on a daily basis what you're doing,
Yeah.
but then it's like, holy cow. And then we're like getting into the point where we're gonna have like self-driving vehicles. Who knows if we're gonna have like
Yeah.
flying vehicles?
Yeah.
Like all these things, all these decisions, they're changing like cities, infrastructure, security.
Sure.
Like to
Mm-hmm.
me, for many reasons, security is one of the aspects that like I that kind of like put me in a place where I was like, I want to work for a company like BMW because
Yeah.
they can change life for good because as an individual, you always need to go from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And making that trip safe, it's super, super important, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you have an impact on so many things that maybe on a daily basis, when you look at your Jira board and you see like, oh, fix bug A or B
Mm-hmm.
or C, you don't realize. But then on retrospective, like you put it in a balance and you realize that it's a very, very beautiful challenge.
Yeah. All right. So then on the flip side of that question, what's been the hardest thing that you just didn't expect?
So uh, one of the hardest things, and it's not hard, it's just like it limits you sometimes is like
Sure.
because we are like so kind of like careful with security, right? Like the way you architect your software has a big impact. And if you don't get it right from the beginning, especially at the beginning, then it's really hard to change and
Yeah.
react to
Yeah.
changes.
Yeah.
So that one is like not something that I don't like. I actually like I'm the first one that understands the value of that.
Yeah.
But maybe you're working on I don't know, like a news application or something.
Yeah.
It's something that you maybe don't pay that much attention, but then you come to this other side and it's like, no, you have to be very careful about how you protect this data.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a good buddy of mine who was part of the VB team when Visual Basic, like way back when they first started, and he told me a story about how they had rolled out Visual Basic and they had had a bug, and they wanted to fix it, but that bug had become a feature because everybody had programmed around it, and it was a known thing, but for them to fix it, they would actually introduce a bug because now they would have broken a lot of applications. And then it just got me thinking of like the things that we do and don't do are features regardless of how we think about them, and we're stuck with those consequences. And sometimes they're things that are within our control that we can fix, and a lot of times they're not, and we can't change it. Even though it may be the right thing may cause a whole lot of wrong things to go happen. And that's just like, like you said, we look at the Jira board or we look at whatever and we think click, click, click. And it's like the inaction or action of doing some of those things or not doing them could be detrimental to God knows what.
Yeah, it's definitely like when you think about code and like you might think that, oh, it's just an extra line of code. What could be wrong? Um, but for example, in my case, I think one of the best things that happened to the software industry is the pull request process,
Oh, yeah. Oh, for
where you
sure.
get to review the code that someone else has written,
Yep.
where you get to apply feedback, where you get to say like, hey, I don't understand this line of code, and it's like a community exercise, right?
Yeah.
Where like
Yep.
you only get that code into your development branch or your master branch once you're kind of like comfortable with the solution that it's being proposed.
Yep.
I think that changed pretty much everything because now you can part of that feedback you can attach it to your like continuous integration
Yep.
pipeline, run all the tests, make
Yep.
everything looks good, and you get the thumbs up and let's go. I
Yeah.
think that's very, very important for successful software projects, especially for those that you're expecting those projects to be living for a long, long, long time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That to me, it's one of the keys. Like
Yeah.
I would not be able to code with that, like without that backup.
Sure. Yeah, that's a kind of a good way to. I think of it as a reassurance, right?
Yeah,
Somebody else has taken some time to kind of look at this thing and tell me whether I'm crazy or not. And um, yeah, yeah, for sure.
yep.
All right, sir. Before we end, at the end of every show, I like to acknowledge or extend a little bit of gratitude. And with that being said, I want to say thank you to you for sharing. Thank you for um, being out there and speaking and interacting with others. Your enthusiasm and passion shows through, and I think it's fantastic. It gets others excited about the craft. The fact that I mean, I've been super excited to have this conversation, and I can't wait to have more with you around this place because it's just a fun place in the world. So with that, from everybody, from me, thank you for the conversation today. Um,
Uh, Thanks to you for the effort that you're doing here. It's amazing.
I appreciate that. Um, Last question. Um, the mic's yours. The floor is yours. What piece of advice? What piece of what message? Uh, what would you want to leave with anybody who's watching today?
So I'm not gonna talk about cars. I'm very like I have a team that is wonderful. Um, so the value of a team, especially like in software engineering, where like there's like a human aspect that sometimes we forget because we think that engineering it's all about like a very streamlined process. But that element of learning, always eager to learn, and coaching and listening and feedback, like again, like
Yep.
it goes back to the pull request process. Like I really encourage everyone when they're like looking for a team or working on a team to enjoy that process as much as possible, to learn, to help others to learn, to share concerns, and just like work better like in a group that at the end you're gonna be spending like a lot of time together, like probably
Yep.
more time at work than at home. So
Yep.
you better love your team. And I don't know, I feel really, really, really proud of the team that I have here. Like, so that would be my piece of advice to everyone.
I love it. Yeah, I often coach people when they're looking for new jobs or roles or whatever to say, look, they're not just interviewing you, you're also interviewing them. Like it
Hmm.
has to work on both sides. Yes, there's a contractual business relationship in place where they're paying you for a service, but you're giving them a service and you want to work at your peak performance as well. And the holistic piece of that is there. And to your point, you have to work with these individuals every day, 40 hours a
Yep.
week, 45 hours a
Yes.
week, 60 hours a week, whatever it is. Like that's a lot of time to spend with people you don't hate. So if you don't like them, go find someone else. They,
Yep.
they probably don't like you either, right? All
Yeah.
right, Jorge, how do people get in touch if they want to get in touch with you?
So the easiest way it's gonna be through Twitter. So I have my Twitter account is J Coca Ramos, J from Jorge, and then Coca is my first last name, and Ramos my second last name. System
Okay.
that we have in Spain. But yeah, I think that's the best way. Like because even though I don't tweet very often, but I'm very kind of like active and always checking. I usually speak at conferences, um, and there's like a slides also where I talk about like the BMW process and the speaker deck and things like that. So I encourage everyone if they're interested also to not only watch this one but like see if they can find information and yeah, I'm pretty much like available for anyone who has questions or comments or feedback.
Oh, I love it. Love it. Well, with that, Jorge, thank you for today. Thank you for everybody who watched this live stream and those who will come. If I'd be curious to your thoughts on the automotive industry, the software that's around it. Make sure to drop some comments below so that Jorge and I can uh, get involved and talk about things. Give us a thumbs up if you like it. Subscribe and tell your friends. We're here every day. Jorge, thank you for the conversation and have a fantastic weekend.
Thanks to you. Enjoy your Friday.
What will you be driving this weekend? That's the question everybody wants to know.
My personal car, it's a 4 Series
Okay.
in a really nice blue color.
I'm a sucker for blue cars, so uh,
Yeah.
well done. And I look forward to maybe sneaking into that garage and I don't know, picking out a Rolls Royce or two to go drive.
Let's see what happens.
All right, sir. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. Bye bye.